And we are on. We say all praises be to the Creator, all power to his people. In the name of Yahshua, the Black Revolutionary Messiah, I greet you, my brothers and sisters, in the spirit of truth and the words of peace. Shalom Aleichem. Giving a special salute to the Black Messiahs. Our motto is stop waiting for a Savior and be one. Stop waiting for a Savior and be one. Tonight, family, we have a very special program. Our research coordinator for STIC, the STIC division of the Black Messiah, Sister Sharahn, is going to do a review of a very popular book back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
ISIS Papers by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, the Queen Mother, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. The reason why we wanted to do this particular book, one of the reasons, is because we are developing an African-centered response to the attack on critical race theory. And besides Neely Fuller's book, one of the things that books is based on is the ISIS Papers. So I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight. We have Brother Asante joining us, and a good brother, very knowledgeable brother. So we're going to let Sister Sharahn do her book review, and then we're going to open it up for questions and discussion after she finishes. So, Sister, thank you for taking your time this evening, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Peace to everyone. So I first want to start off by just making a mental note of when this book was written. This book was written, this is 2021, so almost 3 decades ago, basically. 3 decades ago, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing wrote this book. I feel like as a sounding alarm to Black people, and back in the time when she wrote it, there were things going on locally and within the country and even globally that as a psychiatrist alarmed her and made her feel like, Black people were just basically asleep, but that we have been really left all these little subliminal signs. And by signs, I don't mean like road signs, and that signs meaning in behavior and music and culture and arts and religion, that should have been a roadmap for us, but were somehow revamped and taken to basically become distorted. So they were no longer really a roadmap for us, but were roadmaps for our oppressors on how to deal with us and how to keep us asleep. And so it's been really interesting rereading it. I read it the first time, I probably was in my 20s. And so I remembered some of it, but having read it now, at the time when I read it in my 20s, I was like, wow, that's all going on and stuff. And Rodney King had happened. And now fast forward and we have Floyd that has happened. So unfortunately, not much has changed. And so I think that it's definitely worth it for people to read this book. Whether you're religious or not, whether you're woke or not, read it. It may take a while to read it. It always takes me a while when I read something the second time because I notice stuff that I didn't notice the first time. And so, I'll start off by reading one of the statements that I think, is a challenging statement to make, but unfortunately, it's becoming a more and more honest, factual statement. And this is on just page 4, just in the very beginning. Chapter 4. a Fuller's account. It says most white people hate black people. The reason that most white people hate black people is because whites are not black people. If you know this about white people, you need know little else. If you do not know about white people, virtually all else you know about them will only confuse you. And so, unfortunately, black people are living in a state of confusion. And this is today. So, as far back as she wrote this, we're still confused, waiting for someone to save us, waiting for someone to tell us what to do, waiting for someone to pass a law or a bill or do something. And so many of us don't realize this. Many of us really think that, deep down white people love us. They just don't understand us that is not the case. And so I started off kind of revamping and going down. One of the things that back then struck me and still now strikes me, and really just because with the upcoming holiday, I wanted to do it because of Memorial Day, because Black people, we love holidays in this country. And I don't think holidays to us mean the same thing as they do, but certainly we are supportive economically when there's a holiday. And so she was talking about the image of the holidays that we just don't understand. Where I have, she was talking about Christmas, and what Christmas really means. And unfortunately, how for Christmas, many of us, guilty as well, we go out, we get a Christmas tree, and we decorate it with colorful balls. And just the symbolism of that. We cut it down, back in the old days before they had artificial ones. And even up north where I was from, you would go and you would buy a live tree, which had been cut down previously. You take it home, you put colorful balls on it, and you light it up and you celebrate this. And when the time comes, you first take the balls off, the colorful ones, and you put it outside. Now, when they come pick that tree up, what do they do with it? They burn it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very symbolic of Black castration, which of course is something that, as far back as we can go, white people felt like would grant them power, or and by power I mean they were concerned that their white daughters were going to somehow be molested and tainted by this black man animal, and that would taint the bloodline. That one drop of black blood would taint that bloodline. And so as far back as we can go, Black castration was always a way of punishment. And so
they ritualized their fear. They made it into a ritual. Okay.
Right. And so there were other holidays that fell into that image as well, such as Easter, which, now they have the bunny, which symbolizes it. And they may say, oh, it's a sign of, fertility. Well, yeah, bunnies do have a lot of sex, but there's a lot of other animals that do as well. But for Easter, the white bunny lays colored eggs, and it has nothing to do with being reborn through Christ. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. So these colored eggs come out of a white baby, something that they cannot do naturally. No white person can produce a melanated individual, but we can. So that's something that I think makes them feel inferior deep down, is what she's saying. And so she feels like, when one ingests the colored eggs, then they feel like they lose sin. Sin equals whiteness, equals death. And they feel like by them eating that, they're somehow eating life, because even in death, we lose color. And so, that is a theme all throughout the book, how, the white sting of death is something that they've constantly and symbolically been trying to get away from. Valentine's Day. This was a good one. I never thought about this one. As she illustrates, it has nothing to do with the Saint Valentine, and yet it began with men, white or Western men, getting chocolates, preferably with nuts, sometimes caramel, placing them in a heart-shaped box, which there's an author, Ajit Mukherjee and Madhu Khanna. They have this book called The Tantric Way. They explain the heart shape as really being an upside down vagina. So basically, you go out, you buy these chocolate covered nuts, and you put them in this heart-shaped box, a vagina, and then you give it to your sweetheart, who ingests these chocolate-covered delights. And so you have to wonder, where did that start? Why chocolates? Out of all the things, and then you think about where chocolate comes from. She talks about sports, which, Black people, we go crazy over some sports, but you really think about the fact that you shoot the basketball into a net, symbolic vagina, football into the goal, open white legs, and all of these are done by Black players, and none of the owners of these teams look like us. So you have the white man who feels sexually inadequate because all white men deep down feel like the Black man is, the original man, the man that, his woman may desire. And so the way that he can get that satisfaction deep down is by controlling that Black ball. So, such things as this, and I was thinking as I read that about Colin Kaepernick, who ironically was, quote, blackballed from even having any say so as soon as he decided to say that Black lives mattered. So, it's okay for him to dribble and shoot this ball and do all of this, but the second that, he says that his life matters, he's blackballed. What a term.
So if and that, you made me think of something. The first time that book really gained mainstream knowledge is during Boomerang, and people didn't pick it up. But when Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy were playing pool, that's what he was talking about. I don't know, that's an old school
with the
movie.
Ball on the table and stuff. And
right.
And the thing is, they were like, "Oh, you're just paranoid." Yeah.
But that's where he got it from, the ISIS papers. It's in the ISIS papers. He didn't mention it, but those who have read the ISIS papers, okay, that's where Martin Lawrence got that from in Boomerang.
Yeah.
Brother, the white ball knocks the red.
Right.
Continue, sister.
I gotta rewatch that movie now. Yeah, so as far as the symbolism and all of that, like even in the way that she speaks about Christ being, everyone, if you're really thinking deeply on it, there's no way that a white man would be lynched and castrated and stabbed in the stomach and hung from a cross for defending people. He was Black. So we'll just say that. And then somehow he became this frail image, of a white man being pinned to this cross. And she speaks about how even the cross in itself is symbolic of castration, and how, by them doing it, I'm going to the page right here where it is. I will turn it on to the page. Oh, you got it?
Yeah, that'd be chapter 5.
Right.
And that should be around page
63.
63. Yeah.
so, she talks about the symbolism in it and how, if you really think about it, they then, had the image, which everyone now is accustomed to, even Black people, of this frail image being plastered to this Black cross, meaning, well, if I don't get rid of these Black penises, this is going to be what happens to me, and so she was speaking about how did it become to be this thing in Western culture where everyone suddenly became mainly Christian. And so they decided, well, okay, you barbarians, you're going to come over here, and they showed them this image. And under that, they all decided, well, we're all going to join under this because we all have this one common enemy in common. And that enemy is that we might be annihilated genetically, meaning, I have this baby with this woman that I've plundered and raped, and the baby looks like her, not me. And so they began to notice this wherever they went, and they said, you know what, we gonna mess around and die out. And so if we don't start substituting this image to look like us and change this image of God into us, then they're not gonna respect us. They're gonna annihilate us. Hence the image that we now worship. So and everything after that that's happened and has continued to happen has been based on this image of whiteness, which is unfortunately not controlled by us. None of it is. This is going to be a touchy topic next, and I'm reading from my little notes I wrote down on the subject of Black male passivity, as it relates to the growing encouragement of homosexuality, effeminization, bisexuality. I'm not really going to say much. I will say this. I'm all for love, no matter who is giving it, what form it takes. But I have often felt that Western civilization has pushed this image that somehow gay equals Black man equals feminine equals something comical equals a non-leader equals passive, which I don't agree with this image. This is based upon them feeling like to be gay means weak. And unfortunately, to be gay as a Black man doesn't really give you very much power. I've never seen a vast number of Black men adopt Black children. It's very difficult, and so as a Black man, she talks about how, all cultures gain power through men, through the muscle mass of men. The women are the nurturers and they raise the children, and the men, they enforce things through physical strength. Well, if you can convince a man that he's a woman, or that he somehow is soft or comical, or get him to don an outfit where he's clowning instead of doing everything but protecting, the children, whether they're his or not, then you've succeeded somehow. And unfortunately, this has been going on. I have another one in here. So, white gay males can often be seen as masculine, leaders, intelligent, and fathers, while it's seldom that the Black gay male is displayed in this light. So Black male sexuality has actually been weaponized, which is what she speaks about in the book, that, in times of slavery, the Black male was used to increase the number of slaves that someone had, because one Black male could impregnate hundreds. And so that's what would happen. So she speaks about back then, and this goes off topic, but same topic, that the Black man somehow was useful. And so there was this power within him because at least he was procreating. He served a purpose then. But now, with welfare and all of this stuff, a man can, he can have as many, quote, baby mamas as he wants, but he's never going to actually legally be allowed to live in this place if she's on public assistance, because he can't get a job, because the image of him holding power in one of these jobs is not what is wanted. So his sexuality has been weaponized. And
for those of you who are just joining us, this is Sister Sharahn, our research coordinator, and she is doing a fantastic presentation of the ISIS papers, and she's going to continue her presentation. Then after that, we're going to open it up for questions and comments. Continue, sister.
Cool. So since we don't control our images in a grand scale, one can only conclude that the benefit of our images, whether gay, feminine, bisexual, father, whatever, criminal, they all benefit someone else. So page 83, and I'm quoting, during the past 400 years, Black men in the U.S. have been forced into passive and cooperative submission to the white man. And this is basically through the threat of lynching. Specific target tactics range from actual physical castration, lynching, to other overt and more subtle forms of abuse, violence, and cruelty. We should not be ashamed to recognize these tactics used to oppress Black men. It is the truth. It is reality. Ultimately, this is the meaning of Black oppression. All Blacks are oppressed. And she emphasizes here that Black men are oppressed because ultimately it is male muscle mass that oppresses people. And only male muscle mass has the potential for achieving liberation. So if the men of a people are oppressed, the women are brought under oppression, as they are dependent on their men for protection and defense. Women do not have the muscle mass to liberate people and protect the young. Women develop the young, but their men must provide the protection and the security apparatus. So this reminds me of Breonna Taylor. Who, my hat goes off to her boyfriend. Somebody was banging on the door, they came up in there, and he did what he was supposed to do. They tried to lock him up because of it. But there's been so many other times that and I always speak up about it, but people will repost these images of cops or Black women or women of color in general being beat down or handcuffed or pimp slapped, and post it as it's something comical. And unfortunately, oftentimes it's a Black man holding the camera while it's going on. And this is something that is now normalized, so because, unfortunately, we have to speak about what she's saying, to protect your woman or any Black woman in this time means it's probably going to mean jail time or certain death. And so, she was speaking about how Black women or women in general, to kind of counteract this, have to, when you have a son, not necessarily raise him the way that you imagine yourself, this strong Black woman who doesn't need anyone. That may be true, but you don't want your son to mimic that. And I've often felt like, and I'm hoping this doesn't get me in trouble or barred permanently, but I've often felt like many gay men mimic Black women. And I'm not sure if that's deliberate, or I'm not sure if they somehow feel that a Black woman is independent and doesn't need anyone, and so they're mimicking us. Even these guys that are, you know, YouTube famous and all of this, they're mimicking Black women, and you know.
No. Well, I was going to ask, who else would be the epitome of womanhood, and who else would be the prototype to mimic, if not Black women? And
Right.
this you get what I'm saying? Because naturally, and this isn't to justify it, but you know, naturally at one point in time, our role models when it came to masculinity was white men. You see, and because, you know, from a societal standpoint, who else was the you know, archetype of success, protection, security, stability, strength, power, authority, if not, you know, the white man? So when it came to who it is that we wanted to mimic in our values and mannerisms,
Right.
and, you know, not attributions, aspirations, we wanted what he had, because, you know, that is what being a man was. And so if you look into society, you know, aside from the oppression that women have suffered in our country, when you look at as far as an identity is concerned, there's a culture that exists among Black women, and there is
Yes.
a femininity that is unique to Black women. So, you know, it's kind of like who else would be taken as the model, you know?
Right. Right. It's like there's power in it. There's power in it, you know, but unfortunately, I feel like that power doesn't roll over to a gay Black man. A gay Black man, if he gets pulled over and a cop is having a bad day, he's still going to get thrown on the ground, beat, maybe called some slurs, and shot. You know, he still may be kept out of a job. He may, you know, make someone feel threatened. So she speaks about how oftentimes, not that, you know, I don't think she's thinking that someone is playing at being gay, but that it just became such a thing that it was a survival mechanism. Like, well, I may not get shot if I accept these attributes, if I just accept it, kind of like, you know, in the pack of the wolf, the one that turns over and lays on his stomach. It's not that he's saying that he's wants to die. He's hoping like, all right, I give. And so this is what's been happening.
Brother Jack has a question. Let me take you off mute, I think. Hold on, Brother Jack. Brother Jack, hit the mute button. See, can you take it off on your end?
Okay, I think I pressed the
I
button.
hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
Okay, there it is. There it
Yeah.
is.
Okay. I read this book like 100 years ago when I was at A&T. And when the subject that you were speaking on, where you're talking about the roles, man, woman, boy, and girl, her suggestion in the book was that the colonizer took man, so all that was left was the other three.
Yeah.
An immature imitation where we have fallen short of really being who we supposed to be. And or we could choose to be something else. You know, only two left other than boy was woman and girl.
Right.
And so the system, like you say, the survival, or may even be You ever see like a Play-Doh form where you push down on it and there are forms that you go through, where star, square, whatever. So the system has squeezed us into these boxes.
Yes.
The man role, you kill the man. Kill Malcolm, kill Martin, you destroy Marcus, you destroy any man that stands up.
Yes.
So when we aspire to be the men that we talking about, death is an opportunity. Now, when that crossovers into the Willie Lynch concept, see, I'm 6'4", about 300 pounds. So they take me, kill me in front of you.
Right.
So that you like, okay, he big and they kill him.
Yeah.
So I don't want my son to be like that.
There you go.
And so when you had those 4 outlets, those 4 outlets, one is supremely dangerous because that's the direct threat. What you call it, the muscle mass, direct threat to the man. Because in our language, he was known as the man. The man.
That's what she said.
There was an old show, like she said in the book, Chico and the Man. I watched it. Sanford and Son, I watched it. I looked at a lot of the sitcoms. What you look at, let's see, let's take Family Matters. The mother, in what I saw, was the strong figure.
She was the
The
shot
father, so the father was the heart of us. The son had no brain, but he was the body of us.
Right.
In Urkel, they made mock of, but think about what he was able to accomplish in the context of the show itself. He genetically cloned himself. He created artificial intelligence that would fall in love with his girlfriend. So he should have been a billionaire. But you saw what they did. They put glasses on him and a bow tie and made him silly. They turned him into a clown.
Yeah.
So that's, we playing. Remember niggas afraid of revolution? Niggas are players, they're players. And when you say stand up for real revolution, we were only playing because that's what us boys do. So the concept of those 4 pieces, manhood is potentially death because we threatening the man.
Right. And that's what
that's
she
what
was
we
talking
got.
about too, like how we even start referring to ourselves as, why do we refer to each other as baby? What's up, baby? What's shaking, baby? And now you got these rappers, you got Lil Boosie, you got Lil Wayne, you got the baby, like what is, and yet
Juvenile.
You have all these other Black artists trying to come out, but they're not going to let them come out because they might actually be saying something that's intelligent. But the ones that they'll let speak are referring to themselves as children.
Yeah.
That hang out at the crib.
Yeah.
So she was talking about all of those.
So we can do like another, Sister Sharahn, probably another 20 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up again for the roundtable.
Okay. Let's see. My next one is really, I won't go into that one because we talked about Black on Black violence with the last book study, but I just out of curiosity, she had gone on. Now this book was written, like I said, in 1982. And she talks about guns as symbolism. And so on page 107, you've got the illustration following that page of the gun. And then above it, you've got the illustration of, obviously, Black male genitalia. Both do something, both kill. And so to have a gun means that you're able to kill something. To have Black male genetic weaponry means that you can basically annihilate the white race genetically. And so they've made their own weapon to respond to ours, which is the gun. So in 1982, when she wrote this book, there were 25,000 gun deaths in the US. In 2020, 41,000 gun deaths.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, and she goes on to talk about, the illustrations such as the cannon. The cannon was also something that was just a bigger, they said, all right, well, you have a bigger one. Now we have a bigger one. And so she even speaks about how the way that, Westerners held their guns on a holster in, the cowboys and Indian movies was at the hip, but turned to the side, it looked like a genital. And so, talk about guns as symbols, and unfortunately, we're now using those same guns to kill each other. So yeah, we already talked about terms, but I'll add to the terms we talked about with the baby term, the word motherfucker, which she says the original motherfucker was the white man, and how that's really an offensive word to them. So I just wrote down here, baby, a term used from one black man to another, which was a term of endearment, really, but it had just become so commonplace that we didn't really think about why we picked those words. Or, a man referred to his woman as his mama. Why is that? So I'll go on to chapter 12. And this is funny. This is what we were talking about earlier, Paul, before we even started this discussion. Why is it that Black people have a hard time following through, or just committing to a task when it comes to being on board with other Black people? Like, what is that? So let's say paragraph 2. So she was just saying how Black people are kind of caught in this circular thought pattern. And, I guess it's kind of like we go around in a circle, meaning we move from problem to problem perception, away from problem solution, down a diversionary path, and back again to problem perception. This may then be followed by worrying and obsessive complaining. There is never consistent motion towards problem solution, because to do so would challenge and alter the power dynamic of oppression. Thus, high-level fear is set in motion. So there's your answer. You ask why does this happen? It's fear. Fear of death, ridicule, finances being taken away. You look at every time someone says something that offends someone, gay or white or Jewish or lesbian, or they then make a public apology because they're afraid they're going to lose their finances, which would be financial death. And so, just even with Nick Cannon, the way it all happened, like, he was apologizing for something that made so much sense, which was crazy to me. Turning to page 155, 1-2. So she writes, and on page 155, second chapter, she says, we are witnessing a collective Black floundering and an ideological vacuum and disorientation. So again, like, just, a confusion within Black people. All that remains is for Blacks to escalate tragically their activity of powerlessness, arguing and squabbling amongst themselves, and to compete with one another for white supremacy jobs and Gantt crumbs. Or Blacks can pretend as a diversionary thought strategy that the real struggle exists between imagined Black classes, or between Black males and females. So this is actually happening like now. You know, you have rich Black people arguing with middle class or poor, and that's going on in Durham right now, like right now. You know, or you really have a lot, like every time I look online, you know, it's a lot in the young thing. Like I've said to my nieces and stuff, why do you refer to a man as a nigga? This nigga won't do this, this nigga won't do that, nigga this nigga that. And then the next post is, I don't know why I'm single. You don't know why you can't meet a good man, because you're not referring to men as men. You're referring to them as something that's offensive. And he in turn is going to refer to you as a hoe or a bitch or something degrading. So there's this squabbling back and forth. And so she writes, every energy and psychological effort is expended at both the individual and collective levels to black out and avoid focusing on the true problem of white-Black confrontation, which is white supremacy. All Blacks realize consciously and or unconsciously that to engage in such a realistic focus can mean certain death at the hands of white supremacists. So fear of death, you know, how whichever form it comes, it's fear. You know, I think the past leaders that we had at some point just got tired of being scared. It's kind of like when you know your mama's gonna whip you, you just stay out late. You're like, well, I'm gonna get a whipping anyway. You just stay out late at that point. Now go on to chapter 13. She speaks about the self-image or color of God, and how it affects Black health, and points out that from birth, you know, the self-image begins to form, then self-concept, and then patterns of behavior. So what does it mean for Black people? And she's got some really interesting questions, which I really liked. So for Black people, she's got a whole bunch of, let's see, page 164. And I wrote it down. Let me a second. Where did it go? I will come back to that, because there was a list of questions that she actually has, which I really, really liked. All right. Page 183. This is probably my favorite. If there is no vision, the people will perish. Proverbs 22, verse 1. She speaks about how Black people are distracted by TV, music, entertainers who are never positive. They never play powerful role models, but are always clowning, dancing. Even at one point, they had Ali, who was a boxer, you know, shown kind of chucking and jiving while eating a sandwich, all while justified homicide is going on. And unfortunately, nothing changed. You know, she says Black people are not seeing the war. Black people are afraid, but Black people are going to have to get over their fear. Black people do not know what is happening, but Black people are going to have to learn and understand what is happening. Black people are not thinking, but Black people are going to have to begin thinking. Black people are not being quiet, but Black people are going to have to start getting quiet so they can think. Black people are not analyzing and planning, but Black people are going to have to begin analyzing and planning. Black people do not understand deep self-respect, but Black people are going to have to learn the meaning and practice of deep self-respect. Black people are going to have to stop permitting Black children to play with parenthood. Black people are going to have to stop moaning, rocking, crying, complaining, and begging. So all of these are just things that in 1982 Black people were doing. She goes on to say, stop finger popping and singing, stop dancing and clowning, stop laughing and listening to loud radios. All of these behaviors and many more have absolutely nothing to do with addressing the challenges and conditions of the open warfare continuously being waged against the Black collective. Still relevant today. Still relevant. Oh, here's my questions. Okay. And it's actually chapter 20. And I'm going to have to turn a light on in here because it's getting dark and I can't see. Hang on one second.
While she's doing that, family, again, thank you to everybody who's watching, people who will watch it on a later broadcast. Sister Sharahn is doing an excellent job of breaking down the ISIS papers and talking about why it is still relevant in 2021, 3 or more decades, 4 decades, really.
Yeah.
4 decades after it was published. Yeah, 4 decades after it was published. So we're going to go on for about 10 more minutes, and then we'll bring it back to the panel discussion. Continue, sister.
All right. My little cute cards. All right. Oh boy. Hold on one second. My own 2 Black children are coming in cackling. Hey, I'm live. That's okay. So some of the questions are, Black children are our most valuable possessions and our greatest potentials. So the questions that she poses for Black people is, number 1, will Black children in the U.S. ever develop to their maximum genetic potential? Number 2, if so, who will assume ultimate responsibility for bringing about that maximal development? Black people themselves or white people? Number 3, if Black children are not to be maximally developed, what do Black people really think is going to happen to this large Black undeveloped mass of human beings? And 4, are white people in any way looking to Black people for the maximum development of white children? So I bring this up because we're, in the trenches of fighting for critical race theory. And, Black people that don't want to join in, or they think it's magically going to somehow get one for them. Who do they think is going to do this work? And I'm really speaking to Black people that complain about something that happens at their child's school, but they never do anything to actually, join the fight. Not a single email. Not a class meeting, not a carpool for another kid that maybe doesn't have a ride there, nothing. And so at some point, we are going to have to take back what was hijacked, our children's education, their culture, their spirituality. All of that is really up to us. Now we can, force the hand of those in power to teach what we want taught, but ultimately that challenge and that task, it's ours. And if we don't do it, we're not going to have anything. Our children won't have a future. No child is going to have a future, because eventually the children coming up, they're going to be fearless. They're going to get to the point where they're going to get tired of it. At some point in time, you're going to get tired. As Kendrick Lamar said, Black people are going to get tired of snatching shit off of the shelves, and it's going to be like bloodshed. It's going to be like Nat Turner. And at some point, that's going to happen. And no one's going to be able to cry about violence or anything, because that's all that children are being taught, is that you win things by violence. The victor tells history. So if that's what children are learning, then that's what they're going to do. I'm going to have to pause this just for one quick second.
Okay, and while you're doing that, I think Brother Santi has a. Okay,
Yeah.
hit the mute.
You know, one interesting thing to note about the implementation or incorporation of critical race theory into, you know, education, or, you know, the question about who is going to lead that particular initiative. I don't really see the successful implementation of it without increasing the amount of blacks in education. Because, you know, currently, if we know that at the very least 80% or more than 80% of the, you know, teaching populace is white women, if we know that black men make up 2% or less of, you know, educators in, you know, in the system, then it's who exactly, you know, back to the question is, who really do we expect to implement it? Is not going to be the 80% white women that you get what I mean? As I don't really see it being successfully implemented without partnering with organizations that are seeking to increase the amounts of, you know, blacks in education and everything that comes with that. You know, and so we would have to talk about the salary, we would have to talk about the livability of the wages, but naturally it's going to be black educators that are going to truly at heart be the ones that are implementing this type of curricula in the classroom comfortably.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, that's how it should work.
You know, I'll bring up, and so that they're like opposing perspectives to take into consideration, right? So on one hand, and I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with, you know, the rhetorical question. You know, Malcolm once said, you know, who told you to let your oppressors educate your children, or right to that effect. And so think of that question, but now frame it as a white, you know, individual talking to the majority of teachers in education. You know, because if we're talking about castration and how castration is really just a direct manifestation of self-preservation, then if I can expect my oppressor to educate me with the tools needed to remove the oppression, naturally you can expect the oppressor to teach the future oppressors not to oppress,
right,
or the future oppressed to resist the oppression. You see what I'm, so it's like there has to, you know, well, I'll stop there.
I mean, good points, brother. Brother Jack, hit the mute button, brother.
I am a black educator, and I work with kindergarten through 12th grade. And you know, I really have not been a student of the current discourse of critical race theory, but I've always, I learned a lesson a long time ago. We were taught a long time ago in the lessons. Why is the black man afraid of the devil now that he is a grown man? Because he was trained to fear him when he was little boys, and he was taught to eat the wrong food. So I'm the child of educators, and the thing that I found in my matriculation, I had great black teachers that helped me groom me towards this. And I believe Minister Paul, we talked about how it's in a lot of the textbooks that we have, our face is in it. You just got to teach it. It's there in your face. I have a textbook, the Olmec civilization, the Olmec heads are in the book. The Moors are in the book. The African culture is in the book, but it's not pushed in the SOLs. So for me, I share that anyway, because that's just, you know, and the group of guys that we came up as history majors at North Carolina A&T, that's what we pushed. That's what we fought. We fought for Black studies to come to be mandatory at the school. It was a fight, but we had to, in the school at the time wouldn't do it. So we had to go grassroots, undercover. Look, hey, we did the research. if you take those 6 hours, they count as your humanities grade. You're not going to fail. It's going to be a part. So we recommend that you do this. So, you know, think about this. Did Moses have to go to Pharaoh to get permission to talk to Pharaoh?
No, sir.
No. So, I mean, we don't have to, I don't have to ask the Commonwealth State of Virginia to ask me, you know, to say, look, I'm going to teach these kids this. And during Black History Month, I'm the one that says, okay, what were we doing before the colonizer came? Because if we teach Black history as Black history, we talking about from the beginning, from the first Black man and Black woman that came in the primordial space to that right there. From there, before the coming, what we're teaching is Black independent mind and Black nationalist independent minded thinking, because we created civilization without permission of the colonizer, who didn't know where he was till we found him. Mm-hmm. This is your thumb. Cut your, cook your food. But when we teach it in terms of what we are able to accomplish after slavery, we're still teaching what we're doing in spite of, as opposed to teaching what we could do regardless of. We need to, so teachers like me and forums like this enhance and embolden teachers to do what they need to do in the classroom, in accord with the state boards. And like for us, we have something called standards of learning. All right, I'm gonna look at my standards of learning, but I'm also gonna enhance what I have, because that's how I've been trained to do it. And so we have to encourage each other to do that, because you don't need them. We don't need their permission. We like Malcolm said, and so you legally change your name. He said, look, I didn't ask you to give me this name. I don't need to ask you to change it. So 16, 19, if I feel like I want to teach it, I can justify it. I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna encourage others to do it. And with the white children that I have in my classroom, with them, they get to look at what happened. I don't put it in terms of their whiteness. I put it in terms with their thought process. So when the conquistadors came to South America and saw how wonderful that culture was, and they said we want it for ourselves, and they killed everybody to get it. That was in the textbook. I didn't have to say it. It was in the textbook. That's what they did. Then I said, well, was Pizarro correct for killing these people? Nah, that wasn't right, Mr. Shaw. I said, hey, see, if we do things the right way, things can work. So, like they say, a house divided against itself can't stand. And a house that's been broken down, if we build it up, can stand. So I'm dividing the house and building the house in the same classroom. That's what we had to do. And the other thing I'll say, I got to roll out of here, and I appreciate what you guys are doing with this. And I have definitely used your work in my classes for the last 30 years. So I just want you to know that.
I'm honored, brother.
It's my honor, bro, for real. So I'm gonna tell you like this. Get everyone you know, particularly Black men, in the upcoming school year to volunteer at their schools. Go in there. My first day in the elementary school, I got hugs from kids I ain't even know, because they got to see us. And some of my kids, unfortunately, don't get to see us until they're in a facility like where I am, where I work. So if you guys can volunteer, go. It's necessary, all right? Keep on doing what you're doing. And your breakdown of the book, sister, was wonderful. You know, we look at economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Add another one to it now that we got COVID-19, health. So we got to put that. So we're going to go from 9 to 10. So you guys continue to do what you do. I appreciate you. Brother, I need you to hit me up when you get a chance to it, because I need some organization information.
Got you, brother. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Y'all have a blessed night. Peace.
You too, Brother Jack.
All right.
Okay, Sister Sharahn, back to you for the wrap up. Hit your mute button. Sister Sharahn, hit your mute button.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that was basically my wrap up with that part about the children, because the next thing that we're going to be talking about is the critical race theory. And I definitely feel like we need a way to deter that by getting more people to not just simply say they're on board, but actually be on board and do it. And that's right about images of Black men. I think that's important for children, especially Black children, to see, you know, that there can be Black men that are not going to be afraid, and that will come to their school or teach them martial arts, or, you know, have these programs where, you know, they feel protected, you know, because that's a deep issue. There's no way that you can raise a Black child to be successful and not repeat the same thing that is happening in this book over. Like, I asked myself at the end of this book, I was like, damn, like the same stuff is happening, but the same stuff is happening because we have the same components. You know, so you can't keep putting the same ingredients into the pot and expecting a different result. That's madness. And so, you know, Black people are living in a state of confused madness. We keep voting for the same type of people. We keep asking the same people the same thing. And sometimes, you know, you have to ask a different question or put a different ingredient to the pot or scrap the whole damn pot and start over. So I think, you know, a lot of these Black leaders that are in there comfy and cozy, you know, shucking and jiving, it might just be time for new ingredients. You know, it's kind of like the diet we had. Like he was saying, you know, the things that we were eating were bad for us. And so we suffered. But if you're beginning to become awakened, you know that the same ingredients that your ancestors who were slaves were eating are not the same ones that you have to eat. So you might face a few challenges to get something healthier or whatever, but you certainly don't face the challenges that they faced. They didn't have anything. You know, they had what was given to them and they ate it under penalty of death, which, you know, thankfully they survived. So now, fast forward centuries, we are able to eat something different. So we don't have to keep going for the same okie doke. At some point, we have to change the ingredients. And I think that she was just trying to illuminate that, like, okay, these are the components that you're dealing with. This is what, you know, you need to be aware of and to tell your children. And so, you know, like a lot of people, when I told them I was reading this book, they're like, oh, that crazy book about that woman that's talking about all these stuff, she's paranoid. But the same things are going on. So, like, how can she be paranoid if everything she said in the book is actually what's happening? How can someone be paranoid if everything that they claim to be afraid of is factual. That's not paranoia. You just don't want to accept it and say that you're aware of it because, like she said, to say so, many fear will mean death. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to read the book. Loan it out, borrow it, download it, however you can get it, read it. But read the book.
Indeed. Sister, you did an excellent job. Beautiful job breaking that book down. This will be downloaded so people, if you have any questions, you can always hit us up. And we have study groups every Thursday night at 7 o'clock. You're welcome to join. Brother Santi, did you and your queen have any closing comments?
Well, I'll say one thing. You mentioned the confusion, right? And like it made me think there was a book that I read back in high school, The 48 Laws of Power, right? And there's a chapter about beating the water to catch the fish. And so like naturally it's confusion, right? The more that individuals are preoccupied with misinformation, miseducation, fake news, false news, and right everything in between, the less you can expect them to actually employ some critical thinking skills and analytical skills to really connect the dots and identify the patterns that exist in our society. And I enjoyed the conversation. I look forward to the next one in the event that I'm free. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, brothers.
Thank
Brother.
you.
And thank your queen for joining us. Did she have any comments or? She's good?
She's good.
Okay.
Yeah, she's good. Yeah.
Sister
Okay.
Sharahn, did you have anything else before we close out?
Nope. I'm trying to think about what I'm gonna do a book review on next. So
I'm looking forward to it. So stay tuned next month, which would be right between Juneteenth
yes.
and 4th of July.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that powerful one. Maybe do Barry Shango's book. European Part 2 about European holidays and mental genocide Part 2. We'll talk. We'll talk. We'll talk.
Maybe.
But I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thanking everybody who will watch this on the playback. As always, we leave with the Black Messiah motto: stop waiting for a savior and be one. Shalom.
Shalom. Peace.
Peace.